Hello and welcome to episode 84 of 10,000 Stitches podcast. A semi-regular chit-chat all about the joys of knitting. This is our first episode of 2018, so Happy New Year to you. I'm coming to you on January 1st. This episode will go up on January 2nd. I should probably introduce myself. My name is Andy. If you were looking for me on the interwebs, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Ravelry as Purlbug, P-U-R-L-B-U-G. You can find my blog at thepurlbug.com, and then we have the 10,000 Stitches podcast group on Ravelry. If you were looking for links to anything that I mentioned today, shops, patterns, what have you, all of that will be, if you are watching this via the embedded video on the blog or the Ravelry thread, everything will be linked right below the video. If you're watching this on YouTube, in the description box below the video, there will be a link to the blog post. You can go there, find all the links right below the video. Yeah, it's been like 2 weeks, I think, since I recorded the last episode, so I have to kind of get into the groove. But yeah, it's going to be a pretty standard episode today. I have some finished objects to show, some works in progress. We'll talk about what's coming up next. I don't have any dyeing this week, so we'll kind of skip that. We'll do a question of the week. We'll talk about the new knit along that just started today, and then we'll do some chit chat. So yeah, gonna be a pretty good episode. And I've actually just finished up Vlogmas a couple days ago. I took my Vlogmas all the way to the end of December. So yesterday was my first day after, like, post Vlogmas, and I'm not gonna lie, it felt really weird to not be doing it because I'd been doing it every single day, and now it's feeling really weird to like sit down and do a formal podcast again. It's strange how like quickly our brains can habituate to things. But anyway, let's talk about some knitting. Yeah, finished objects. I have lots of finished objects to show you guys, and this is really good timing that I'm recording today because a lot of these are going to be, well, 2 of them are going to be headed out in the mail tomorrow, so they will be gone forever as far as I'm concerned. So let's take a good look at them while I have them. And the first one is the biggest one, which is the dotted rays. It is done. I finished this on, what day? Saturday, I think? Yes, because I finished it on my last day of Vlogmas, which was Saturday. So I kind of showed it off. I didn't really show it off there. I had it wrapped around my neck. So this is what it looks like. It's gigantic. It is about as wide as my wingspan, which is roughly 6 feet. So it's, I think I measured it and it was like 70 inches along this top edge. So it's pretty big. It's about 20 inches at the deepest point. And I'm not sure how well you guys can really see the color gradation with it because it's getting really washed out by the window. But it's most dramatic, I guess, on this end where things are all kind of closest together. So yeah, you can kind of see the color fade. I mean, it's meant to be subtle, so I guess it's good that it's pretty subtle. But yeah, I used up pretty much all of the 3 skeins that I dyed up for this. In case you haven't been around for a while, I know I've been talking about this all the time. So this was knit up with my 2-ply sock yarn, which is a 75-25 superwash merino nylon blend, dyed up in 3 sort of saturation levels of my That Pumpkin Drink colorway, which was sort of my fall colorway that I did. So this beginning color, this is at 50% saturation, then sort of towards the middle we go to 75%, and then at the bottom it's 100% saturation of the dye mix. So yeah, it's just creates this really nice sort of fade. I think I mentioned this is the Dotted Rays shawl by Stephen West. This was my first Stephen West pattern, and yeah, I'm going to say I really enjoyed knitting it. I'm not going to lie, it got really boring once you got past the first couple wedges. But at the same time, I think maybe that was because I was kind of doing it all in one color. If I were to do it again for myself, I think I mentioned this before, I kind of want to do a watermelon one, or I would do each wedge in a different color so that you kind of, get that change. Because yeah, just like knitting and knitting and knitting got a little bit boring. But I am very glad that it's done. This is a gift for Wesley's mother. So yeah, and it's really, she requested like a really nice big warm shawl, which will be great because they live in Minnesota and it's really cold there right now. So this will be perfect for her. It is definitely, really big and squishy and will keep her nice and warm. This is how I wear my shawls. So just to kind of give give an example of what it looks like on. I know some people don't like the tails at the bottom. I don't really care. Like, I don't find that they bother me because I'd rather have the tails here and make sure that it's not going to fall off than the other way around. So this is what it looks like on. I kind of want to keep it for myself, but of course I'm not. But it's very thick, very warm, and I really love it. And so I mentioned I used up most of the yarn. This is what I had left of the 3 skeins. So I think this is the first skein, then this is the second one, and this is the third. So I would estimate that this is maybe 25 grams worth of yarn. So I used up, you know, somewhere between probably 250 and 275 grams of the yarn, of the 300 grams that I dyed up to make this. And the only modifications I made to the pattern are that I knit this on a US 4, which is a 3.5 millimeter needle, as opposed to the US 6, which is a 4 millimeter needle that was called for in the pattern. Otherwise, I wound up not having to add any extra wedges. I know I had talked about thinking that I was going to need to do that. I didn't. I just made the large size, and it, as you can see, it wound up plenty large enough. It definitely grew a little bit when I soaked it, and I didn't even block it. I just laid it out to dry, and it definitely grew. And I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. So yeah, it's a very easy pattern, kind of once you get the hang of it. And I would definitely suggest it, but I probably wouldn't suggest knitting it all in one color. But yeah, I am glad that it's done, and I'm glad that I get to send it off to Wesley's mother and that she will get some good wear out of it, you know, this winter still, because it's certainly not going to be spring in Minnesota anytime soon. So that's finished object number 1. And I'm actually just going to leave this on while I keep talking because it's nice and warm and my apartment's a little bit cold. So finished object number 2 is the other thing that's going to be headed out in the mail. This is the laptop case that I was making for Wesley. This is based on a blanket pattern called the Aspens. And I've talked a decent amount about this before, so I won't go on too much. This yarn is just a cheap acrylic yarn from AC Moore because I didn't want him to have to be really nice to it since it's a laptop case. It's meant to just protect his computer. To make this, I basically cast on the entire chart from the Aspens, so the full width of the blanket, and then I think I knit, how many chart repeats? 12? I made a note of it on my Ravelry page, if you're curious, but yeah, I basically just kept repeating the chart until it was big enough to wrap all the way around a laptop, and then I folded this top edge over and then just seamed down the sides of it. So this is meant to fit a 15-inch MacBook Pro, one of the newest models. So it fits my computer, which is a 13-inch old MacBook Pro. And I know it will fit his because it's plenty roomy on mine. So I'm going to send this off to Wesley as soon as I can, so that he can use it. But yeah, he really liked it. He really liked how detailed it was and how it turned out, and had no complaints. So this is sort of what it looks like up close. You can see that really beautiful cable detailing. I really love this cable pattern, and I think it works really well, and it produces a fabric which is really nice and squishy, which will be perfect for a laptop case just to kind of protect it. And the reason that I chose to do this flap at the top rather than just making like a sock sort of a thing was because I wanted to make sure that the laptop would be protected on all sides, and not be able to slide out. So basically what he'll do is he'll open, slide the laptop into this big end, and then stretch this side over the top. And that way there's no edges that are going to be, you know, exposed to the harsh realities of the world. So that's finished object number 2. So my third and last finished object, I was really making a push to try and finish up a bunch of stuff because I was getting close to being able to finish up all my lingering works in progress from 2017, and I was like, okay, this would be really great if I could do this, you know, by the end of the day yesterday. So the last thing I had to do was finish up my Ondine socks. So that's what I was pushing on yesterday, and I finished them. So I know it's been a while since I've talked about these, so I will go over a few more details about them. The pattern is called Ondine, and it produces this really beautiful sort of like scale pattern. And this is just done with stripes and slipping stitches and this special sort of scale stitch, which the designer of the pattern actually has a YouTube video on how to do, so in case the directions are confusing. But yeah, I knit this with 2 colors of my hand-dyed yarn in 100% BFL. This is them. And the way that I did this is I think I cast on the 72 stitch size. I knit the toes, heels, and cuffs with a US 1, which is a 2.25 millimeter needle. And then I knit the rest of the sock with a US 1.5, which is a 2.5 millimeter needle. Things that I would do different. Well, so first of all, it's a toe up sock, so there's that. But things that I would do differently next time is I think I would knit the entire thing with the US 1 rather than knit the sort of body of the sock with the 1.5. I was afraid with how, you know, sort of how the scale pattern has worked and the slip stitches and stuff that it was going to wind up being too small. But it turns out it actually, so sometimes slip stitches can cause things to like pull in stitch-wise, if that makes sense. Sort of like if your stitches are running like this, it can cause things to pull in this way. And sometimes slip stitches can cause things to pull in row-wise, where like if these are your rows, it can cause things to pull this way. Hopefully that made sense. This pattern, the way that the slip stitches work, they definitely pull row-wise, right? So it makes your row gauge tighter than it would be otherwise, but it does not make your stitch gauge tighter. So, so the fact that these are 72 stitches worked on a US 1.5 means that they are a decently large sock even on my big old feet, which is fine because I was planning on them being sort of like an around the house slipper sock anyway. But I definitely think that you don't need to like take a precaution and knit with a larger size needle than what you would normally knit with. Just my thoughts. Otherwise, I'm really pleased with them and I can't wait to start wearing them. So yeah, this is what they look like, just one more time. And they are done. So with that, all of my lingering works in progress from 2017 were finished up, which led me to be able to cast on some guilt-free stuff for 2018. So the first of my guilt-free cast-ons, is that what you would call it if it's crochet? The first of my guilt-free new projects was one that I started last night because, you know, I finished up the Ondine socks and then I still wanted to keep my hands busy, but I didn't really want to start another knitting project. I just wanted something to keep my hands busy. And so, you guys, I gave in, and now I have a crochet tapeworm. I started a granny stripe blanket. You know, if you've been around for a long time, you'll know that I've had various levels of success with like sort of these like scrappy blanket projects before. I had a Cozy Memories blanket that I started and then just abandoned because I didn't like it. But I've actually done sort of scrappy crochet blankets before. I know I did one towards the end of grad school. It was kind of, I think, as I was getting ready to move out of my apartment in Nebraska, move back up to Wisconsin. I had a bunch of, you know, acrylic yarn that I've accumulated at my apartment and I was trying to use it up. And so I know at that time I made sort of a scrappy blanket where I had a big old crochet hook, like a size N or P or something, like one of the really big ones. And I held like three strands of worsted weight yarn together, and it was like some sort of like shell pattern blanket or something, basically just to chew up yarn. And just whenever one of the strands would run out, I'd add in a new strand and I just chewed through a whole bunch of yarn like that. And I have no idea what happened to that blanket. It was, I think, sort of like lap blanket size. And my guess is that I probably gave it to someone to use as like a car blanket, you know, like a blanket that you throw in the trunk of your car, because it was, you know, all acrylic and didn't really mean much to me. But I remember, you know, especially as I was going through this transition period in my life of like leaving grad school and getting a grown-up job and all of that stuff, like just having that sort of simple project to work on was very meditative and soothing in, you know, sort of a tough time of my life. And I mean, not tough, but just, you know, time full of transition. So that's sort of what I wanted this to be. For one thing, I wanted to chew through scrap yarn because, you know, I made my Advent socks this year with all my own scraps and all of that. But even then, it's like it didn't really put a dent in my sort of scrap yarn because I frequently will wind up with 20 to 30 grams left of sock yarn after I make a pair of socks. And I'll, you know, use some of that for scrap projects. But even still, I have this entire container full of just little balls of yarn, and it's little balls like this where it's like this isn't much yarn to use. What am I supposed to do with this? So I'm basically just going to be chewing through all of this stuff. Some of them are only, you know, a couple of grams, like this is maybe only a few grams. Some of them are far larger, like, I don't know. I have some in here that are maybe approaching like the 10 gram range, like this one. or this one, which is fine. You know, I really don't care. I know Jacqueline from the Brooklyn Knit Folk podcast, she has sort of, I don't want to say strict rules about how she does her granny stripe blanket, but you know, she doesn't like her different colors to go all the way across, and she wants it to be really super scrappy. I just don't care. I'm going to use every single scrap of yarn until it runs out. So I'm connecting them using the magic knot because that is the way that produces the least amount of waste. And then I'm just crocheting until they run out. So here you can see a transition between this is Patton's Croy and this is the sock blank that I used to make my sock blank shawl. Here I just transitioned from that sock blank shawl to another Patton's Croy. So I'm just doing it. I have a whole bunch of like my Christmas yarn on this end. I just really don't care. I want it to just be super scrappy and kind of whatever happens, happens. And even the balls that I have that tend to be larger, like this one, this is a self-striping yarn. So it's gonna look scrappy when it's crocheted in anyway because it's gonna keep striping. So I feel like it works out. I have no idea how many I chained to make this. I just kept chaining until I got really sick of it. And I'm actually kind of lucky because it is actually, you guys can't, it's off the screen right now, but it is actually just long enough to go over my bed and then drape down a couple inches on each side. I sleep in a full-size bed. I don't have a queen-size bed. So it will be perfect if it becomes bedspread size, but if it doesn't, that's okay too. It's mostly, like this is definitely a process knit for me, or crochet, a process crochet. It's definitely about, you know, using up these scraps, turning them into something useful, and just having something really simple and brainless that I can work on that's even more brainless than like the Cozy Memories blanket. You know, it's just, I just pick it up and I just start crocheting and I don't have to think about it. So yeah, that's what that's going to be. And obviously, you know, as I make projects through this year, I will add yarn to this. But yeah, I'm super duper excited about it. You know, I feel like the thought process that I was going through when I started this was, there's sort of this quote, I guess, that goes around in minimalist circles, and I don't know who it's attributed to, but it's, you know, keep nothing in your home that is not useful or beautiful. And this, I feel like, is sort of one of those things to where it's like I have all these scraps that are just taking up space, and now I'm going to turn them into something useful, and that just makes me feel really good about it. So yeah, this is going to be something that I probably won't show off all the time because I'm planning on just kind of like sitting it next to my chair where I sit and watch Netflix, and when I want to, I'll pick it up and work on it, and when I don't, I'll just let it sit, and that's fine too. So the hook that I'm using for this, in case anyone's curious, this is a Boy, B-O-Y-E, the knitting needle brand. This is a Boy hook, and it's a size D, but it's a 3.125 millimeters, so it's 3 1/8. And I think, like on Ravelry, a size D is a 3 1/4, so it's like, it's kind of a weird size, but that's fine. It's one of these like ergonomic sort of ones that has the like nice soft squishy handle. So, and I already had it, so I was like, perfect, this will work. So this is what I'm using, and that's that. So not much to that one. My other cast on is one that I've been talking about forever and finally got started. So this was my first project on my queue for 2018, and it is the Exploration Station. It's finally happening, you guys. I actually wound up balling up the yarn yesterday when I just needed a break from the Ondine socks. I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna wind up all the yarn, and I don't have it here to hold up, and if you watched, oh my gosh, was it episode 82? It's hard to hold up 4 skeins of yarn anyway, so I will put a picture of what they look like, you know, the 4 different colors that I'm using. But as a reminder, that dark brown is dyed on my 100% BFL base, and that's sort of like the contrasting color, and then the other 3, the 2 greenish ones and the orange one, are all over-dyed Cascade Heritage Silk, which is an 85% superwash merino, 15% silk blend that I had bought in sort of a tan color a while ago and then over-dyed, and this is what I came up with. So let's stop stalling. Let's show you what it looks like. So I stopped in the middle of a row like a horrible knitter, but this is the start of my Exploration Station. So I have all 4 of the colors in right now. So you can see the dark brown here, and that's also what's making the stripes, and then the orange, and then this is the dark green, and then this is the light green. So I'm pretty pleased with it. I am not doing the wedges in the same sort of color order as is specified in the pattern, because I sort of just have my own idea about how I want them to look, and I'm gonna I'm gonna go with it. I also think I'm gonna add another 2 wedges because there's 6 total wedges in the pattern. I think I'm gonna add 2 more because I'm knitting this on a smaller needle than what the pattern calls for. Again, so it's a pattern by Stephen West. This pattern calls for a US 6, which is a 4mm needle. I'm again using a US 4, which is a 3.5mm needle. So I think adding on those extra 2 wedges will be fine. And yeah, and I've sort of played with the color combinations of the rest of it, just sort of what I think will look best. And that's sort of because I have these 2 colors, the light green and the dark green, which they're showing up very distinct on camera, but they are actually, in real life, they're closer together in color. And so I'm kind of trying to do my best, you know, to make that a good design element rather than having them just sort of mush together. But yeah, this is what it looks like so far. I am completely in love with it, partly because the rows haven't gotten super long yet. I mean, I had the same thing with the dotted rays, where at the beginning you're like, oh, this is the best. And then the rows get really long and you're like, oh, this is such a slog. But for now, I'm really loving it. And since I have today and tomorrow off of work, for kind of the end of our winter break, I figured I'm just gonna, you know, bust out as much as I can and we'll see how far I get. But right now, I'm just super duper pleased with it and I'm just really, really loving it. And I think it's one of those things where I'm really glad that I kind of really waited and sort of lived with the anticipation of the project for a while, because now it just makes it all the more sweet to really be working on it. So that's my only other work in progress right now. I'm not sure, I might wind up casting on a pair of like vanilla socks or something to work on at work. Who knows? I might stop bringing knitting to work. I don't know. Because, you know, maybe I will try and devote more of my free time at work to reading books. So I don't know. These might wind up being my only works in progress for a while. Hard to say. In terms of then what's going to be coming up next, I talked, you know, sort of about my plan for the year. I think on the last episode, I kind of went through what's in my queue as my big projects for the year. So the next big thing I want to make is and I always forget the name of this, the Stremoyen, I think, which is a big colorwork sweater. That's going to be sort of my next big project. And I've decided on which color yarns I want to use for that, but I haven't bought them yet. So that's something that I need to get done. But sort of, I think maybe as like an in-between project between the Exploration Station and the Stremoyen, I want to do a smaller colorwork project because, again, my colorwork skills, not the best. So I kind of wanted to do another project to sort of practice color work in a way that is not as big as a sweater. So I think the next thing that I'm going to make is the Octo Mitts. And this is a mitten slash fingerless mitten pattern that was gifted to me a while ago by a viewer, so thank you very much. And it's just a really cute colorwork pattern that has little octopuses on the back of it. I will try and put in a picture of what they look like. I have done some modifications of the sort of palm side of it to put in a thumb gusset, because the way this pattern works is it has an afterthought thumb and I don't really want that. So I've put in a thumb gusset. We'll see if that works or not. And, you know, sort of rejiggered the color work on the palm for that. And otherwise, I'm not really making too many changes to the pattern. I haven't even started them yet, but I've sort of been thinking about this so that I am ready to start them. And yeah, I'm super excited to make them. I've been wearing my fingerless mitts a lot more lately, so I think these will be a good sort of addition, and hopefully they will help with my colorwork skills a little bit. And when I do wind up casting those on, I'm planning on actually using the same 2 yarns that I used in my Undine socks. And this will be sort of the background color, and then I will do all of the octopuses and stuff in this color. So I'm only going to do 2 colors for it. The pattern sort of calls for multiple colors, like you do each octopus in a different color, but I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm just going to use the 2 colors because I really like how these go together, and I feel like having a pair of sort of aquatic octopus themed fingerless mitts will go well with my sort of mermaid themed socks. So that's sort of as far ahead as I'm planning right now. I'm just trying to sort of, you know, for one, stick to the plan that I've laid out for myself for my big projects, and then sort of just feel out the small projects as they come. Like I said, I've been putting a lot of thought into the Octo Mitts. But otherwise, I'm just trying not to plan too far ahead. We'll see how it goes on that. I know I said I don't have any dyeing to show off this week, but I actually do have a new purchase to show off, so I will do that. So this is something that I picked up when I was up in New Hampshire over the holidays. And if you were watching Vlogmas, you would have seen the shop where I picked it up. And the shop where I went is called Scratch Supply Co. Let's see if I can focus on this guy. Scratch Supply Co. And this is their information. Whoa. And obviously I will, you know, link to their website in the links. But yeah, it's a little craft store, mostly yarn. They did have some fabric there in Lebanon, New Hampshire, near where Wesley lives, that I guess just opened up in the fall. So it must have opened up, I think maybe right around the time we were moving Wesley up there, or just after, because I remember that when we were moving him up there, you know, I looked around for local yarn stores and I didn't see any. So they must have opened up like just right after that or something. So, but yeah, super duper nice people. You can actually see a little bit of the shop. I think it's Vlogmas Day 29. I'll link it, of course. But one of the days that I was up there, that was basically all I did that was interesting that day. So I took a little tour around the shop and showed it off. So I'll link to that Vlogmas video if you want to take a look at it. But I did also get a chance to talk to the owners, and they were super nice. They're displaced Minnesotans, just like me, so that was really fun. And yeah, just very, very accommodating about me wanting to film their shop. So while I was up there, I picked up a skein of yarn. And this yarn is actually dyed by, okay, so I could be totally wrong about this. I think it's a husband and a wife that own the shop. And so it's at least a man and a woman. I think they're husband and wife. And the woman dyes this yarn like there, like in the basement of the shop. And so this is her yarn that she dyes, and it's only available at this shop. And it's amazing. So this is the skein that I picked up. This is Hex Fiber Arts. And this skein is, oh, it's actually not marked. I'm guessing that this is, it's a fingering weight. So it must be 100% superwash merino. This is the label. Again, let's see if I can focus on that. This is the label. And this is the yarn. So let me, and the colorway is Chai. And like I said, this is available, I'm pretty sure, exclusively just at Scratch Supply Co. So this, how just amazing is this? And it's, of course, getting a little bit washed out because of the lighting. Maybe if I hold it back a little bit more, let's bring the focus back here. Maybe if I hold it back here. Yeah, this gives a little bit better impression. I mean, the colors are very vibrant, but it's getting a little bit washed out. But it's got these really beautiful sort of greens and like oranges and like this really bright orange pop, and then other areas that are sort of like a softer like blush color. I mean, it is just amazing. And I'll put it close to the camera one more time just so you guys can really get in on this. I mean, just beautiful. So yeah, I could not even when I saw this one. And I'm probably going to use this as a giveaway prize for like one of the knit-alongs or something. Probably not this next knit-along, because like I said, I want the knit-along prizes to sort of match the color theme of the following knit-along. And the color theme for March and April is green, and while this does have some green in it, I feel like this would fit better for like red or orange. So I'll probably just hang on to it for a little while and just, you know, just pull it out and stare at it every so often, because it is amazing. So yeah, highly recommend if you happen to be up in that area, you know, like near Dartmouth or, you know, I mean, it's not like New Hampshire or Vermont is that big. So if you happen to be in New Hampshire or Vermont, highly recommend seeing if you're anywhere near Scratch Supply Co. and stopping in. So yeah, that's that. So speaking of knit-alongs, let's talk about knit-alongs. So the last knit-along of 2017 ended this morning. I closed the threads this morning. We had a lot of entries, I think 81 entries, which is awesome. And it was really fun, you know, to see like what new things people were doing or like what things were new to different people. So that was really cool. And our winner of that knit-along was post number 27, which is Another Yarn 9. And I looked on your page and I didn't see like a first name on there, so I'm not sure what your first name is, but Another Yarn 9. I will have already sent you a Ravelry message by the time this podcast goes up, so hopefully you've already seen that. If not, please check your Ravelry messages. But her entry that was the winning one was the Almost Aran socks, and I'll try and put a picture up here of them. Yeah, so congratulations. In terms of the next knit-along, it has technically already started, the first knit-along of 2018. And that will run from January 1st, so today when I'm recording this, yesterday when this posts, until the end of February. And the sort of big theme for this one is winter. And so that breaks down into a color theme, which is blue, and a technique theme, which is either stranded or mosaic color work. I know before when I've done color work as a theme, I've sort of made it very broad. You know, I've even said stripes are fine for color work, or, you know, intarsia or whatever. But, you know, when I think I talked about this when I talked about, you know, the knit-alongs for the entire year. But, you know, I kind of have this big overarching theme for each of them, and then sort of what that made me think of in terms of colors and techniques. And so when I think of, you know, winter and winter knitting, I think of, you know, like Fair Isle color work, you know, like stranded color work. And so that's why I'm sort of limiting the color work here to either stranded knitting or mosaic knitting. And if you've never tried mosaic knitting, you really should try it. It's really fun, and it's a lot easier than stranded knitting, because like if you can knit stripes, you can knit mosaic color work. So that's why I wanted to include that, because it is a little bit easier than stranded color work. And you know, and I say this as someone who can't do stranded color work very well, so it's like, I appreciate it too, thanks me. But you know, yeah, so that's the theme, blue or, you know, color work. And I don't have a prize for it yet, but I will be getting one. Maybe I'll pick something up at Vogue Knitting Live. Maybe I'll think about doing that. But yeah, and it, like I said, it runs to the end of February. I will hopefully have the threads already opened up by the time you guys see this. I've said this in the past. I don't know why that's so hard for me, because it's like so little effort that has to go into it, but it takes me forever to get it done. So yeah, and I will try and put some patterns in the chatter thread that sort of would fit the stranded or mosaic color work, in case you need some ideas. I always try and search for free patterns, just because that way, you know, the barrier to entry is very low. But if you have questions about if things count, just pop a note in the chatter thread and we'll check it out. But yeah, that's kind of that for the knit-along stuff. And then what else? Question of the week. So question of the week this week is sort of, I'm not going to do like a year in review or anything. I know a lot of podcasters have been kind of doing that. I'm just not going to do that, partly because I just don't want to try and like summarize my year, because that's just so much work. But I thought the question of the week this week, I would kind of get you guys to talk a little bit about your year in review, and just one point of it. What was your favorite thing that you knit this year? And why is it your favorite, right? Is it because it had a lot of utility, or because it really challenged you, or because you really just enjoyed the process of knitting it, or because you really enjoy the final product? And it doesn't even have to be something that's done. Like, it could be something that's still in progress, but just like, what is your favorite thing that you knit in 2017? And I think for me, my favorite thing, I'm going to count two things that I knit in 2017, but they sort of share a commonality that makes it clear why they are. My favorite things that I knit in 2017 are my Scrappy Bias shawl, my Scrappy Bias shawl, and my Advent socks from this year. And the reason that those are my favorite things is because of their scrappiness. You know, I know a lot of people knit Advent socks and everything, and like bought Advent calendars, and that's really cool and they look really awesome. But for me, my Advent socks and the Scrappy Bias shawl were so special because they were made using scraps like from other projects that I knit. So every single stripe that I put into them was like a really special memory for me of the project that yarn came from originally. And I think that's why I really love scrappy projects, and maybe that's why I never could get into, you know, sort of like mini skeins and stuff, because like mini skeins just don't really mean anything to me. Like, it maybe be different if it was like someone that I knew in real life and we swapped mini skeins and they were a really good friend, but you know, I don't have a lot of those knitting friends in real life. So to me, like mini skeins just aren't super special, but like scrappy projects that come from scraps that I've used are super special to me. And that's why I think, you know, this guy, this crochet blanket, that's why I think this will be a really great project, is because this is using all scraps from projects that I've made. So again, I get to look at those yarns again, and I get to relive the original project and all the good memories that I have with the original project. And I just think that's really special. So that's why I really like those two, and why they're my favorites is because it's sort of like I get to experience a whole bunch of my work all at once. You know, like when I see the Advent socks, I get to experience all of the projects that those yarns came from just in that one pair of socks. And the same with the Scrappy Bias shawl, is I get to experience all of those projects whenever I wear that shawl. And it's just, it's really special to me, and I really enjoy that. And I'm hoping that's what this blanket will turn out to be like too, is, you know, every time I see it, I get to be like, oh my gosh, all of those things that I made all kind of went into this, and I got something really useful out of it too. You know, like with the socks and the shawl, it's like I took all of these scraps and then I got something really useful out of them. So yeah, I think those are my favorites. So what are your favorites, and why? But yeah, I think that's going to be it for sort of the knitting, yarny sort of stuff. I'm going to do a little bit of chit chat, just sort of recap a little bit of the holidays, maybe for those of you who didn't watch Vlogmas or didn't want to watch Vlogmas. And then I want to talk about a couple books that I read sort of over the holidays while I was traveling. And yeah, that's going to be kind of it. I will have another episode next weekend, and then the weekend after that is Vogue Knitting Live. So I'm not entirely sure if I will be recording a normal episode that weekend, because I do have time to, technically, because I have the 16th off, or not the 16th, the 15th, which is Monday. I have the day off of work, and I won't be traveling that day. So I might record another episode, but for sure I will be vlogging Vogue Knitting Live. And if any of you guys are going to be at Vogue Knitting Live, let me know, because I would totally love to meet you. But anyway, that's it for the yarny stuff. So I'm going to go ahead, save this clip, go get myself some coffee, because I just brewed some coffee, and then I'll be back and we can chit chat about the holidays. All right, I got my coffee, which is in this super cute raccoon mug. This is actually one of Wesley's mugs that he left here when he moved, and I've been using it because it's just so darn cute. But it is, I forget which podcast I was watching, but someone was talking about sort of like mugs that have the design on the front and the back, you know, because otherwise they sort of become left or right-handed mugs. And this mug is sort of like that, where it's like, I don't like to drink from this side because then, you know, I hit the little nose, but I am also not left-handed, so it's very awkward for me to hold the mug with the handle in my left hand. So it's sort of a tricky mug, and it's not very thick, so it really like loses heat very quickly. So I will actually be drinking my coffee as I talk, unlike a lot of podcasters who I feel like they're like, yeah, I have this cup of tea, and then I never see them drink it. I will be drinking this, so beware. Anyway, so I'll try and keep sort of like the recap of my holidays a little bit short for people who did watch Vlogmas, but yeah, the sort of short story is I'm currently on break right now from school, and so I decided it would be a good time to go pay Wesley a nice long visit. So I left on the 23rd to head up to New Hampshire. We kind of made the decision that we weren't going to like go home to Minnesota to see our families for Christmas because Wesley didn't get a lot of time off, and you know, it's also sort of a hassle with, I mean, just the realities of being an adult and being in a partnership with another person. You know, it's just like the amount of family just gets more and more and more, and especially because my dad and my brother live in Iowa now, it just makes it more complicated for the holidays. So we kind of decided to put all of that off to later in the year, especially with how variable weather can be in the winter. We were like, let's do this later. So I went up to see him for Christmas. So on the 23rd, I started a very long and not fun journey up there. You know, my flight was supposed to leave at like 12:30 from Richmond. And then it kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed, and eventually left at about 3:30, which put me up there, you know, at about 5, put me into Boston at 5. So I don't remember if I've talked about this before, but the way that I get up to New Hampshire is I fly from Richmond to Boston because I can get a nonstop flight and it's nice and quick. So I fly from Richmond to Boston, and then I get on a bus for 3 hours to go up to where Wesley lives in New Hampshire. And this is just sort of the easiest and most economical way to do it in terms of cost and time, because then I only have to take one flight, so I don't have to deal with layovers and other airports and stuff. And I mean, you know, I don't hate it. Like the bus ride gives me lots of time to read or knit or whatever, and it's a very nice bus company. But yeah, so this put me up there at about 5, and so then I was going to be able to catch a bus at about 6 was when the next bus would come. Except that bus broke down. So then I had to wait until 7 o'clock to catch the next bus. And then, like I said, it's 3 hours. So I didn't get into where Wesley lives until 10 o'clock at night. And I was supposed to get in, like had everything gone to plan, I would have gotten on a bus at 2:55 and I would have gotten in at about 6 p.m. So I got in 4 hours later than I planned on. And because I hadn't been planning on traveling all day, I hadn't really eaten. And so it was a rough day. But that was okay. So then, you know, I spent a week up in New Hampshire. We got snow on Christmas Day, which was magnificent and exhausting because we had a driveway to shovel then. So, but otherwise, yeah, it was really nice. It was really chill. It was great because Wesley was able to work from home, actually. So we got to spend time together, you know, even when he was working. He actually was working. I don't mean the air quotes like that, but like, you know, he could be there and we could be sitting next to each other on the couch and he could be working and I could be reading or something. And we still got to spend time together while he was at work. So that was really great that he was able to do that. And the nice thing is that, you know, we got to have an entire week together, and now it's only 2 weeks until we see each other again because he's going to be coming down for Vogue Knitting Live. I'll be going up, he'll be coming down because New York City is right in the middle. So so it wasn't that tough to leave this time because it was like, oh, it's only 2 weeks. This is fine. You know, 2 weeks is no big deal. So that'll be nice. But yeah, I'm super excited for Vogue Knitting Live. I'm super excited to go to New York City because I've never been before. So that's going to be really fun, I think. A really expensive trip, but really fun. So I'm super excited about that. But yeah, I'm kind of excited to get back to work. I feel like I've had my fill sort of just like chill winter break vacation, and I'm kind of ready to get back to work. And I'm kind of ready for spring semester to start because I'm excited about the class that I'm taking in the spring, which is, it's statistical inference, but it's basically a second probability class. I took the first probability class last spring, so I'm taking the second one this spring. And then, yeah, provided all of my credits transfer in properly, I should only have 2 more classes to take, which would be really pretty cool. But that's all future stuff. Who knows what the future holds? The future is a tricky thing. Yeah. So speaking of the future, I don't really tend to do New Year's resolutions, but I thought I would go ahead and put it out to the universe what my New Year's resolutions for this year are. And they're not resolutions so much as just goals. I think I talked about this on Vlogmas. I want to start doing yoga again, so I'm going to try and make that a thing that I do every day. Similar to last year, I want to try and read 25 new books this year. I don't know what the final count was for last year, but I'm pretty sure it was over 25 because I'm pretty sure. So I'll probably try and get my final list together soon. But yeah, I read a lot of books last year, which was good. I'm glad that I did, and I would like to do that again this year. And another goal is I want to increase my personal savings by about 10% over what it is now. Because like I got my personal savings up to like sort of a point for my emergency fund that I was really comfortable with, and then I started diverting money towards other things. And this isn't so much that I want to stop diverting that money towards other things, because that's my student loans and paying for my teeth and stuff. But it's that I just want to be putting a little bit of my sort of, you know, free to do whatever I want with money into savings and just trying to like save up a little bit more money. So I'm gonna try and do that. I actually put a like concrete number on how much of my student loans I want to pay down this year, which is more than making my minimum payments. It's not double, but it's more than 1.5 times. So it's like somewhere between 1.5 times and double what I would pay if I was just making my minimum payments. And I'm hoping, because like what sort of happened, and I'm sorry if this is TMI on my finances, but you guys know, I think money is important, and how we spend our money and how we approach our money is important. And it's important to like talk about it. So when I was paying for all of the work that I had to get done with my teeth, all of that money was coming from the extra money that I would have been putting towards my student loans. So it was really nice because I didn't have to take a bunch of money out of savings, because getting all of my teeth fixed wound up costing me like $800 or something. Even with health insurance and dental insurance, it still cost me a lot of money. But the nice thing was that I didn't have to take that money out of savings. I just took it out of the extra money that I would have been putting towards my student loans. But unfortunately, that means that I haven't been putting as much towards my student loans as I'd like. So that's why I sort of wanted to set a concrete number so that it would be easier to be like, well, I need to pay this much towards my student loans, which means I have to be putting this much, you know, all of that. Anyway, so those are kind of my goals for this next year. I want to try and keep them pretty easy, or at least pretty like simple, so that I can be more assured of hitting them. But anyway, let's talk books, because I think I said I wanted to talk about some books that I've been reading. So I thought I would talk about 3 books that I read over the holidays. The first one was Super Freakonomics, and I've never read the first Freakonomics book. I probably will at this point, because this is actually the second Freakonomics sort of series book that I have read. I use air quotes there because the first one was actually one that I listened to via audiobook, which was, I think it's When to Rob a Bank or How to Rob a Bank. I'll put the title somewhere on the screen. But it sort of comes from their blog, and it's sort of these like short like blog posts that have been sort of rewritten as like chapters in a book. But it's like really good to listen to as an audiobook, because it's all very sort of like standalone. Like each piece is a standalone piece because they were originally blog posts. So like each one is maybe only 10 minutes. So it's really easy to listen to as an audiobook, because it changes topics a lot and kind of really keeps your interest. Great car listening. I actually listened to a lot of it on the bus, you know, from Boston to New Hampshire. So I really recommend it. And especially if you're looking for like an audiobook or something, I highly recommend it as an audiobook. But, so I liked that one, and so then I read Super Freakonomics, which I also really enjoyed. I really just like those kinds of books where they sort of turn your common sense upside down and kind of, you know, make you think about things in a different way. So highly recommend Super Freakonomics. And then the second one I read, or no, let's actually talk about the third one I read. So the third one I read is very similar to like the Freakonomics sort of writing, and I think that's why I really liked it. And it's called Everybody Lies: Big Data, New Data, and What the Internet Can Tell Us About Who We Really Are. And I'm pretty sure this book came out really recently because it was referencing the 2016 elections. I think it came out like within the past year. And it's by, I think it's Seth Stevens Davidowitz. I don't know. It's really tiny on my Kindle screen. But it sort of is talking about like, yeah, big data and how can we use big data to do sort of like data analysis that we couldn't do in the past, and like how, like, you know, sort of how it can tell us things that are sort of very counterintuitive, which is sort of what Freakonomics is all about. And the author actually says in like the epilogue or the afterword or whatever that he was really inspired by the Freakonomics guys, which sort of makes sense then why they seem very similar. But that was another one that I thought was really great. So let's talk about the middle book, the second book that I read, which I was sort of disappointed by. And this one is one that I had on reserve and I was super excited for. And it's called The Craving Mind. From cigarettes to smartphones to love. Why we get hooked and how we can break bad habits. Sorry, I'm trying to read it without like actually opening it, so it's just really tiny. And it's by Judson Brewer. And I don't recommend it. So, you know, I've talked about this before. I'm really fascinated by kind of like, how does the mind work? How do we form habits? Why do we think the way that we do? How can we sort of control the way that we think and the way that we do things? This is just a topic that I find really, really fascinating. And this book had so much potential because this Brewer guy, he says he's like a psychiatrist and he works with like addiction patients and all of that. So it's like, he seems like this really great guy to talk about like, why do we get hooked on things and how can we, you know, get unhooked? And his sort of big premise is like mindfulness. Like he's sort of all about mindfulness and meditation and like learning to like break these disruptive thought processes, which again, sounds really great, but he gives nothing concrete in the entire book. I swear. It was just like a big book about him patting himself on the back. Like, you go, Judson, you're so awesome at meditating. Like, look at you going to all these meditation retreats and you started this clinic or this whatever, and you're just awesome. And like, he never really gives you ways to like help yourself or like, you know, help with how you think. And I think it's like most concrete, and he keeps referring to this stress compass in the book. Basically like that we, you know, sort of the way the compass can point, you know, north and south, is that like we have this like stress compass, and we can sort of, if we find that something we do is pointing us towards stress, well then you just go in the opposite direction, right? And you should do the opposite thing to that, and that will lead you away from stress, which again sounds kind of nice. Except that's about as far as he goes into it. Like, he defines what the stress compass is, but never gives you any sort of examples on how to use it or how to like identify what direction your needle's pointing. Like, he basically keeps referring to the stress compass, but never actually tells you how to use it. It's as if someone handed you a real compass and you didn't know how to use a compass, and they're like, all right, use this to get out of the forest. And you're like, I don't know how. And they're like, well, just use the compass to get out of the forest. Like, you know, the needle points north, so you should, you know, use the compass to get out of the forest. And you're like, I don't know. Like, that's how I felt about this book. And it just really kind of upset me because I read the book and I felt like I got nothing out of it. And it was just so irritating. And I hate books that are like that. And I just, yeah, I don't know. So I don't recommend it. I don't recommend it at all. It had so much potential, and then it just couldn't even. But, oh, sorry for the burp. On that, I think I am about at as much time as I want to be recording for today, and I need to get this edited and everything and finish my coffee, and I can tell that I'm talking faster because I'm getting caffeinated now. So I should probably, you know, call it an episode at this point. So hope everyone had a happy new year. I hope everyone has exciting things planned for 2018 or not, either way. But yeah, I'm super excited for this year, and I think this is going to be a good year for my knitting. I think it's going to be a good year for my personal life, my professional life. I just think it's going to be a good year, and it's going to be a good year because I say it's going to be a good year. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys again next week. Bye.